What is socialism?
Full-fledged communism, where the government has to control all aspects of commerce.
Socialism is the sharing of wealth. That's it. Right? And depending on what extremes you want to go to, communism is the complete ownership of the means of production, and there is no owners, there's no capitalists, it's just everything's owned by the state, everything is produced, and then everybody gets everything for free. Yay!
Socialism is toxic to a healthy society because it punishes success and rewards failure, as Winston Churchill said. Socialism is the equal sharing of miseries. Socialism extorts money from the successful and gives it to the lazy.
Online discourse suffers from a miscommunication problem. Thanks to outright misrepresentation and purposeful indoctrination, it's apparent that people on the right don't understand what those on the left are actually advocating. Ironically, this kind of indoctrination is exactly what these pundits claim the socialists want to do. We need to clarify some definitions. Anarchism, the rejection of unjustified hierarchy. This is a very simple definition. What is hierarchy then? And what is unjustified hierarchy? For a longer video specifically on anarchism, I suggest these videos. But they break down as such. Hierarchy is a system of organization of one above another. Unjustified hierarchy is when there is no justification for placing of one above another. Unless a justification can be given, then hierarchies must be abolished. These unjustified hierarchies can manifest in wealth or power or things of that manner. Anarchism usually organizes in horizontal direct democracies, as that is a way to govern a society without top-down organization. Anarchism then defines the state as one of these unjustified hierarchies, with a monopoly on violence and a protection of private property. Private property in the socialist sense. The means of production. But wait a minute, I thought that socialism and communism required a state. Isn't it state control over everything?
Everything's owned by the state.
No. While state use can be implemented in achieving socialism, many socialists also reject the state. Let's define socialism. Socialism boils down to workers owning the means of production, otherwise known as private property in socialist terms. Rather than bosses or landowners, the capitalists. Communism isn't so much a system, rather an end goal for society. Being a stateless, classless, moneyless society. Socialism is mainly considered to be a way to achieve said end goal in certain theories. In other practices such as anarcho-communism, the end goal is achieving communism right away. But for many socialists and communists, they often share the end goal of this ideal communist society. For more on property, check out this video from Bad Mouse Productions. When you misrepresent these terms, you're not arguing against communism or socialism. You're arguing against a thing almost no one supports. You're strawmanning communists and socialists, and to them, your argument makes no sense and has no relevance.
You've got mail.
What's this?
Hello. I'd like to talk about your view of anarchism and how I, as a Marxist-Leninist, don't think it could work. See, without the centralized...
You've got mail.
Hello. Local strawman Drogo of Strawman Inc. Didn't you know communism is bait as Nazism? Man of Prager says so.
Man of Prager? What the... Oh. Dennis Prager. Prager U. The fake university. Oh god. Communism vs. Nazism. Dawn of Strawman. Because we're dealing with a conservative channel, let's define liberalism and conservatism so that our dealings with this channel don't get too confusing. Liberalism and conservatism are defined as such. Conservatism literally means status quo, but both liberalism and conservatism have a vested interest in the status quo. They just have different means of maintaining it. Thus, liberalism can be viewed as a kind of conservatism. Let's get started then.
Given the unparalleled amount of human suffering communists have caused, why is communist so much less a term of revulsion than Nazi?
Prager makes the claim that the human suffering caused by communists, note, not any specific communist group like Maoists and Stalinists, but communists as a whole, are equivalent to the planned systematic genocide of entire minority groups. As an anarchist, an important quote to bring up is this one from Mikhail Bakunin, famous anarchist and socialist philosopher. We are convinced that liberty without socialism is privilege, injustice, and that socialism without liberty is slavery and brutality.
Communists killed 70 million people in China, more than 20 million people in the Soviet Union, not including about 5 million Ukrainians. and almost 1 out of every 3 Cambodians.
Fun fact, most communists and socialists denounced the practices that led to those deaths.
And communists enslaved entire nations in Russia, Vietnam, China, Eastern Europe, North Korea, Cuba, and much of Central Asia.
This ignores the entirety of the communist movement that are on the libertarian side. As well, an important thing to bring up, communism did none of this. Communism has not happened.
Local strawman Drogo. Did the communists not do the same acts to achieve communism?
The ridiculousness of that is due to there being such a wide school of thought that you can't blame the whole for parts. That would be like blaming all white people for slavery, which is something you don't want, and something I think lacks nuance as well. Communism is not a synecdoche.
They ruined the lives of well over 1 billion people.
And just ignore the other 2 billion lives living in destitution due to the glorious free market. Why capitalism is bad and why it hasn't brought people out of poverty. In the book The No-Nonsense Guide to Globalization by Wayne Elwood, Elwood in the 3rd chapter, labeled Debt and Structural Adjustment, goes into the processes of resource extraction from third world countries or the global south, and the debt they are stuck in otherwise, especially involving loans from the IMF and World Bank, and their predatory practices. Not to mention that the money only goes to the governments, and not to businesses that are local and growing, which are needed to sustain a developing economy in neoliberal capitalism. But after this debt cycle starts, most of the money from the country's GDP goes into refunding these organizations, and these countries then spend more of their GDP on debt rather than the health of their own citizens, creating a myriad of poverty. Haitian financial aid is an example of US foreign policy and neoliberal foreign policy leading to destruction of the development of Haiti through the flooding of them with subsidized US grain, and making Haitian farmers unable to compete, forcing them into the city, into the slums, which penultimately resulted in the mass casualties in the past earthquake in Port-au-Prince. Check the documentary Poverty Inc. for more. Take a look at Africa. There has been a history of foreign powers, either formerly Western imperialism or now modern Chinese imperialism and neo-imperialism from Western companies, now focus on extracting as many resources as possible from Africa, and to do so, they hire cheap, exploitable labor and private militias. These private militias have a destabilizing effect on many of the African societies they interact with, as they listen to none but their bosses most often. All of this is grossly exploitative, disgusting, and a result of neoliberal capitalism and capitalism in general. As well, the only examples he gives are systems in which the state has undertaken the functions of capital. Capital, classes, and the state are not gone. This is not communism. This is state capitalism, or Marxism-Leninism, or Maoism, or so on. Take a look at modern China. They're not even pretending to be socialist anymore. They just admit to being state capitalist. Anyways.
Why doesn't communism have the same terrible reputation as Nazism? Reason number 1, there is, simply put, widespread ignorance of the communist record.
I went to the most liberal school system in public schools in the nation, and we were indoctrinated with the Red Scare in every US history course given to us. We were Red Scare entrenched with knowing the records of every communist failure and no socialist successes, almost as if our education system has a narrative to spin. Where did you go to school, Dennis? Hell, I'm damn sure you grew up during the Cold War.
Whereas both right and left loathe Nazism and teach its evil history, the left, and I'm talking about the left, not traditional liberals, like Harry Truman or John F. Kennedy, has never loathed communism.
It's almost like the actual left, not liberals, but the actual left are socialists and communists.
And since the left dominates academia,
there is this belief that liberals control academia. Liberals just tend to use statistics to an extent, and therefore academia could reasonably support them. The studies that reject liberal hypotheses are often bullshit as far as academic rigor goes. Look to the climate change denial studies. And to go further on this point, there is a conflation of liberals and leftists. There is Marxist critical theory in academia, but that doesn't mean academia is anywhere close to socialism. No one controls academia. It's just that conservatives and other right-wingers demonize academia for supporting positions to the left of them. Academia has a vested interest in capitalism, though, with the greatest admittance of left-leaning thought being social democracy.
almost no one teaches communism's evil history.
Again, I was taught every crime from communists, and I was raised in one of the most liberal areas in the United States. And you assume the left is liberals. Just read a fucking book.
Reason number 2. The Nazis carried out the Holocaust. Nothing matches the Holocaust for pure evil. The rounding up of virtually every Jewish man, woman, child, and baby on the European continent and sending them to die is unprecedented and unparalleled.
As someone of Jewish heritage myself, I agree. Why'd you make this video? This isn't a minutes of defeat in your attempt to smear communism.
The communists killed far more people than the Nazis, but never matched the Holocaust in the systemization of genocide. The uniqueness of the Holocaust and the enormous attention rightly paid to it have helped ensure that Nazism has a worse name than communism.
This is also because communism is a very diverse school of thought, and is more than just one specific form of something. Nazism is a specific form of white nationalist fascism. Nazi punks, however, aren't being hated online as much as you'd think, though, considering the audiences of Richard Spencer and Millennial Woes and others of the like.
Reason number 3. Communism is based on nice-sounding theories. Nazism isn't. It's based on heinous-sounding theories.
Communism aims at utopia. Seriously, that's why people want it. It's a utopia.
Intellectuals in general, including, of course, the intellectuals who write history, are seduced by words. So much so that they deem actions as less significant than words.
Not true, however. The actions of others don't affect a wide school of ideology as a whole. That's what intellectuals see.
For that reason, they haven't focused nearly as much attention on the horrific actions of communists as they have on the horrific actions of the Nazis.
Again, that's subjective. I see so much about the horrible shit communists have done from right-wing intellectuals slung at me for some guilt by association, while those who are Nazis are subscribing to a specific school of fascism.
They dismiss the evils of communists as perversions of true communism, but they regard Nazi atrocities, correctly, as the logical and inevitable results of Nazism.
Yes, because they call for it in their fucking ideology. In Mein Kampf, they fucking blame the Jews as a basic thing. Most communists don't blame anyone but capitalism as a system instead. Read.
Reason number 4. Germans have thoroughly exposed the evils of Nazism, have taken responsibility for them, and have attempted to atone for them. Russians have not done anything similar regarding Lenin's or Stalin's horrors.
Fun fact, Germany hasn't taken responsibility for the Namibian genocide, a pre-Nazi genocide which laid the groundwork for the Holocaust systems. Link to a documentary on it in the description.
Regards Stalin, as University of London Russian historian Donald Rayfield puts it, quote, "People still deny, by assertion or implication, Stalin's Holocaust," unquote.
Tankies deny the Holodomor. Stalin apologists deny it.
Even less so as China exposed the greatest mass murderer and enslaver of them all, Mao Zedong. Mao remains revered in China. Every Chinese currency note has his picture on it.
China uses the figure of Mao to keep the ruse that they're trying for communism at all, but the ruling party actually only cares about profits for the state. China is state capitalist. Fun fact, China is also fucking up South Sudan right now. However, while these right-wingers argue about all the negative things socialism has done, they forget the actual contributions of actual socialists and leftists to society. These contributions include the 40-hour workweek, labor unions, critical and conflict theories of sociology, both commonly used perspectives that are used to understand struggles between races, classes, genders, etc. Contributions to much of the social democratic policies all over Europe, such as the welfare state. Many muckrakers of the early 20th century were, in fact, socialists like Upton Sinclair. Significantly raising quality of life in many areas where socialist policies were implemented, such as Catalonia, the Chiapas, and several nations in Europe. Some of the most famous authors, thinkers, and artists around the world, Orwell, Neruda, Steinbeck, Einstein, all were socialists. A lot of art, literature, and music of a socialistic nature. Punk in most forms. I think my point is made about these sort of things falling flat when the definitions aren't correct. I would like to thank my patrons. Thanks to Valerie and my patrons for helping out with writing. Thanks so much for watching. Please like if you liked and subscribe if you want. Stay safe out there.